on a visual art. And to do an introduction, I'm going to call upon the president of the Detroit St. Andrews Society, Emma Velasco. Emma, I'm going to leave the gavel here in case they don't.
I need it?
Yes.
Just in case I have to rein things in, right? Oh, no, I'm a peaceful person. No, it is my pleasure to introduce a past president of the society, somebody who I admire and respect very much. Bob Giles is going to talk to us about an important art cultural restoration project that he's been championing for the last few years, and we are about to have the results. And Bob, thank you very much. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mwah.
Wow, that was a mwah. That was a nice kiss. Thank you very much. Normally I come up here and I just talk. I don't use these notes, but I have some very carefully crafted slides that I want to show to you, and I want to make sure the folks in the back have the right cues to do the slides. What Emma doesn't know is I'm really here not because of all you great people, but I really am trying to escape all the political advertising on TV and radio, and this is a much better place to be. This conference is a remarkable thing, and I really applaud the early leaders because it does get people together who need to be together and talk about common issues, common problems, common solutions. And that's what's going to happen this weekend. So a huge welcome to all of our out-of-town participants and all the folks who are joining us on the social media pathway, which is great to have that in here. You know, speaking of that, Detroit has never been a destination for people. We get better turnout at this group if it's in Chicago or Guelph or something like that. Detroit is always, you know, maybe 20% lower than the others because people don't think of this as a destination. But what I'd like to propose today is that something that we've been doing for the last few years may turn that around. And maybe the St. Andrews Society, our Kilgore Center, will become a destination for people. And I'd like to tell you why. I'm just one of several committee people who have worked on this painting restoration project for a few years. I just want to make sure that I mention that Ann Campbell, who was up here earlier, Ian Hunter, who's been asking some nice questions this morning, Chuck Forbes, who may stop in to say hello, Randy Kane and Matt Peach are really active members of this committee. There are a few more who come in and out and give us support, and we really appreciate that. But as I say, I hope one day that what we're doing right now with the restoration of this painting may put us on the map, at least if we get a Scottish tour of the country or the area here going on. It'll be one of those things that makes Detroit a destination. If you were here 7 years ago when we did a similar meeting, you heard Randy Kane, who at that time was championing this project, come up here and say, we're going to do this. We are going to restore a painting of Robert Burns, and it's going to be magnificent, but it's big, and we need money, and blah, blah, blah. Well, it was the money issue, and it was the fact that this painting was in such bad shape that's really prevented it from being a high on the list of things we want to do here. And last year, if you attended this conference in Guelph, who all was in Guelph last year? Oh, yeah, okay, good, great. We have about 6 people here today who was in Guelph. But anyway, last year, I had a very brief opportunity to let people know that the painting restoration was underway and things were happening at a very nice speed compared to the first 5 or 6 years of this project. We couldn't be more proud because of that of our sponsors. So who are the sponsors and what's the project? Let's just get into that right now. In 1905, our society was presented a gift from an artist born in Glasgow, a very highly successful marine artist, Robert Hopkins. Now, Robert Hopkins, and that's Robert right there, gave to the society a massive portrait of Robert Burns. Robert Burns, of course, was then and still is very dear to all of us here. We have a shot here taken about 1940-ish of our St. Andrew's band in the hall downtown in the lounge with a painting behind. So you can see how big it is. It's a huge piece of our art, 8 feet by 9 feet without the frame. It could possibly be one of the largest portraits by a Scottish artist of Robert Burns that exists. I don't know that. I haven't researched that. It's certainly one of the largest portraits of Robert Burns in all the world. But for the next 70 years, that portrait in that room hung there in the upstairs lounge of our hall downtown, the St. Andrew's Hall, on Congress Street, to be precise about it. It was safe up there. Or was it? Maybe not. Many of the members at that time smoked cigars, cigarettes, with their weed rams they had in the lounge. And that was very common. I mean, you know, it was an all-male organization, as most were, I should say, up until not that long ago, just a few decades ago. So it was a manly thing to smoke a cigar and have a drink, and there's Robert Burns standing there looking at you. It was kind of a nice little thing. Well, over the years, that smoke created a thick brown layer to the canvas surface. It was so thick, it almost covered Burns's face. You needed bright lights on the painting to actually see his face. And a lot of the detail around the edges was gone, too. And then early 1980, Ian, what year was it we sold the hall downtown? 92. Late 80s, 92, when very few people wanted to go downtown Detroit. That's before the General Motors Corporation moved its headquarters downtown from the new center area. We decided we better take that with us. The problem was, for a period there after we sold the hall, and actually before the hall, we had a rock promoter in there, speaking of music, and he used it because it was acoustically perfect hall. So bands would come in, you know, the lesser known bands. Eminem got his start in this hall too, to name a few. But anyway, but those young kids did not understand the importance of this painting or the emotional attachment the Scots had, who previously occupied the hall. So there were some slashes, there were some pinholes and then larger holes and so forth. But we decided to take it down. And so the painting, as you see here, was finally taken down. You can kind of get a sense of how the surface of the canvas had rippled there a bit with the light the way it is. It was collected by our members, the frame was taken off and tossed out, and the whole thing was rolled up, including the many pieces of the canvas. You can see that only a portion of the canvas is there. The bottom portion, which would be to your left, was actually in big chunks. And you can see it in this next slide here, how those pieces worked. What happened was there were patches on the back. There was filler here and there. In fact, in some places, there were as many as 3 and 4 patches on that painting. So the deterioration, actually, I don't want to blame the young kids who went to the rock concerts entirely, but the painting itself had been starting to deteriorate, and it was in quite a mess. Well, it was kept for many years in some of our members' basements, an art dealer's back room who thought he was going to be chosen to restore the painting. He had it for many years, an attic, then another basement, and so forth. When we finally got this hall, we brought the painting in, and it was stored behind me in a storeroom up on a shelf. You'll see a picture of that in a minute. We started getting bids to find out what would it take to restore this painting and put it all back together again. The first bids, a couple of bids, came in around $35,000. It was that big of a project. And you can see you had a good idea there of what it looked like. We had a lot of light on the painting of that day, so you kind of get a sense of what it's going to look like here. We kept getting bids. We were able to get it down around $28,000 using another well-qualified restoration artist. Then a check arrived from an estate, one of our members, with the instruction that that check could be used for $25,000 for anything we wanted to do with it. And of course, the restoration committee says, "Great, that's exactly what we're looking for. Wonderful. It almost fits the bill." And our treasurer at the time said, "Well, wait a minute. You can't just spend that $25,000 like that. We have to put it to a vote of the membership." So we did. It was a 2/3 vote, of course, and it was impassioned on both sides. That some people thought that $25,000 should be used elsewhere. So it went into the general fund. It didn't go into the painting restoration. But what it meant was, and when you got the show of hands, that at least half of the people, not 2/3, half of the people wanted to restore the painting. So that was enough for us to keep going. We thought, great, we're going to do that. So what we did was we started a project, a Kickstarter project called Bucks for Burns. We thought, well, you know what? This is a great appeal. People over the world are going to want to contribute $1, whatever. So we set the goal way too high. We learned a lot about Kickstarter. We had a video that was, 6 minutes long. It should have been a minute, and it should have had a cat in it playing the piano, I guess. But we didn't have that either. So what we got was pledges up about $3,000-4,000. But as you know, Kickstarter demands that you reach your goal before you get the money. So all those pledges just vanished. So we were right at the start again. And we said, you know what? We're forgetting the fact that we had a whole group of people in this room who wanted that painting restored. So we made the appeal to our own people. And sure enough, we started very slowly, we started getting money. $1, $10, $50. A few people sent $1,000 in. But it was necessary for us to really appeal to our own people. Now, we did get other folks, too, on the outside. We had fish fries here during Lent, and we put a kind of a collage in the corner saying we're trying to collect money to restore this painting. And people would leave $5, on the table to restore the painting. We were really trying to create that emotional appeal as best we could. One of the things that happened a couple of years ago was that one of our members, somebody who is not that active in our group, but has been a member for many years, Chuck Forbes, called and said, there's Chuck, and said, Bob, how's that painting thing going? And I said, well, we're about $20,000. We really want to get to 28 before we feel comfortable to start this project. And he said, well, let me come and look at the painting. I'm going to bring my own artist. Now, Chuck Forbes is even at his age, is one of the busiest people in Detroit. 1960s, he was looking at the city of Detroit and saying, all these buildings are falling down. Nobody wants to live downtown. Nobody wants to work downtown or restore these buildings. So he started buying all the theaters in downtown Detroit. And these were palaces. These are the theaters that were built during the 1920s. Ornate, beautiful buildings, but one screen, right? So nobody wanted that anymore. Well, he would buy them with the hope one day of restoring them, thinking the city was going to turn around. Chuck still owns several buildings downtown. And he, at one point, for those of you who've been downtown, at one point he even owned the Fox Theater and later sold it to Mike Ilitch for the restoration. So he had quite a group of buildings, and he still does. He owns the Fillmore downtown. The Fillmore, of course, is one of the most successful music venues in the city of Detroit. There's something going on there every night. And he owns the Colony Club building, which is a rentable place for, party venues and so forth. He owns another small theater. He owns a restaurant downtown. Anyway, he understands the importance of restoring things. So Chuck came with his restoration artist one night to take a look at it, and that's Victor Ashmayantz. Victor was born in Belarus, and for the last 17 years has been Chuck's major restoration artist. Chuck adores Victor. Victor adores Chuck. They have a great relationship. And but Victor has a tremendous insight and an understanding of how things can be put back together again, and that's exactly what we're doing here at this project. So we went down and looked at Victor's studio in the basement of the Colony Club building, which is under restoration. A group of us went down there, and Mike Gordon, an architect of renown, sitting over there, part of the group, looked at the doorways, looked at the building inside there, and looked at the easels and so forth, and he says, you know, you can probably get it in here all rolled up, but you're not going to get it out of this place. It ain't going to work that way. So he was right, and we told Victor, and Victor says, yeah, yes, you are right. So Chuck Forbes decided to go ahead and give us one of the floors upstairs that was still under renovation. And he gave us a third of that floor, which is a huge space. And you'll see it in a minute in a video I'm going to show you. Visqueened the whole thing so they could work on one side doing the restoration, the painting, and all the sanding, and the other side was completely clean for the restoration of the painting. One thing that is important to say here too is that for Chuck, it's been a great journey to see this thing restored. He said, you know, Victor really didn't want to do this when he looked at the painting. He said, this is almost an impossible project. He said, but he did it for me. And he said, it brings tears to my eyes to know that it's happening and it's really working. So Chuck goes down and checks up on the painting quite a bit. So Chuck has become not only a donor, and he's given money to the project, which will go to Victor, but he's become an angel in many ways. So really, at this point, the only thing left to do was to get out here and start picking up the project and rolling. So the first thing Victor had to do, of course, was the front had several layers of varnish, patches on the back of the painting, covered with patches that were taken off into storage. That's about 2/3 of the painting. I'm in downtown Detroit. Behind me, you see the new Little Caesars Arena. Across the street from the Little Caesars Arena is the Colony Club building, and that's where the magic is happening. Okay, follow me in here. This is the second floor of the building. I just see an artist at work. Into this building here. that's the painting mounted on this new backing. That's what we're working on. All of the varnish has been removed. It's revealed the Tam O'Shanter Bridge on one side, the church on the other, Kirk on the plow at his feet. What happens is not only do they plaster drafts, as they glue the parts onto this backing, and I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, you get pieces of canvas and ash. There's a paste-like substance to dry. But he has to create a surface that's smooth. That's why he's sanding. That's Matt Peach from Midland Studios. Creating a documentary. He says that it's a documentary. The backing itself is unequal. It's a aluminum. It's covered in 2 sheets of aluminum. That whole frame weighs less than 30 pounds. Quite a puzzle. That's Victor. He's always happy to see us come down there and say hello to him. So what's next? Well, we plan to have the painting finished by our Burns dinner in January, where it will be unveiled. It should be a packed evening. It should be a lot of fun. We also have to find a place to mount it in here. You can laugh, but that's a question we don't have an answer to yet. There are a couple places it could go, but that's not my decision, and I want to make sure that I don't have the only vote on that thing. I think people have to feel comfortable with it. It's a very big piece of art. Matt Peach is going to complete his documentary next year, and he says he's convinced with what he's seen and the kind of things he has to put in that documentary, that's easily going to be something that'll be on Netflix. He says, or theatrical release. He's really high on it. And eventually, what I hope to do is to create an educational program with the painting as a centerpiece. Maybe once a month, bring school kids in here, and we'd have somebody lead us through a story of Robert Burns, a story of Scots in America, everything Scottish. So we'd have a connection to young people, not necessarily just Scots, but young people getting an earful of what Scottish heritage is all about. And I hope that that's something that could be funded with grants. But I think doing that on a continuous basis, and for us being part of the community like that, will be a huge, huge draw. It'll connect us very closely with the community, and it'll kind of answer the questions that we've been talking about all morning. How do you use culture, history, art, and music for the next generation? That painting, which was done over 100 years ago, was a gift to our generation and beyond. How are we using it? How are we preserving it? So it's important to understand that. I hope that one day, wherever it is in here, it'll be used appropriately and for a great teaching tool. And I hope that being here, we become a destination. Thank you.
Are there questions of Bob?
Thank you. Just a quick one. Have you figured out how to get it out now?
That's why it's up there in the that second floor. Yeah, it's going to go out. And we've been very careful about measuring everything. Since our architect, past president, brought up the issue that we need to be very conscious of. More than likely, it's going to be mounted in two pieces. And what Victor says is that you'll have the frame, the aluminum back artwork, as one piece that should be mounted separately from the frame. The frame's going to add another foot to the width and height of the thing, 6 inches at least on both sides. But that should be mounted separately. And so the other issue, and maybe some of you are already thinking about this, is how do you protect it? I mean, you know, we've seen what happens here, and this is a rentable hall. You know, we're not here with a guard and a gun every time somebody rents the hall. Well, there's a couple of things you can do. You could put a giant piece of glass over it, which nobody really wants to do that. You could actually create a series of shutters over it that would be lockable, and maybe our logo on the front of the shutters or something, that when the hall is rented, it's protected that way. But so it will fit in there, yes, to answer your question, and go somewhere inside this hall.
Congratulations and well done on such a fantastic project. It's absolutely brilliant. What level of interest have you had internationally from the restoration of the painting?
I didn't hear all that question, but I think you're wondering internationally what kind of interest we've had in it and what can we do. Well, I'll say this. We've kind of kept this project to ourselves. It's had absolutely no notoriety because we weren't sure how it was going to turn out, quite frankly. You know, we didn't want to set a goal that would fall in pieces. Could the thing be put back together again? We didn't even know that when we started. But I can see this because the artist was so well known, and many of his artworks are in private collections. The Detroit Institute of Arts has 2 of his paintings. He was a very well-known marine artist at the time. I can see this becoming part of an international traveling exhibit with the video. You know, I mean, there's probably 10 museums around the world who would love to see this and see how it was restored, because every step of the way has been documented. It's a real project in many, many ways. But that's another way of, you know, putting Burns in the world, too.
Absolutely. It would be fantastic to see it in Ayrshire at some point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yes.
When do you expect we need for the?
When do we expect to be finished?
Yeah, when do you expect to be finished to the point where it's viewable by whomever?
Well, we hope to have it done in early January. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Victor, we did this with the understanding that Victor would do this on his own time. And quite frankly, knowing how much time he's already put into it, he's probably going to get $1 an hour. It's been a real project in doing this thing, but it's a labor of love for him. But it should be done in January in time to actually have it here for our Burns dinner, the 3rd week of January.
Other questions? You know, sure, Gus.
The doors from here are also from the hall, aren't they?
Yeah, that was a labor of love too. The restoration of those 2 front doors, I should say the inner doors, amounted to about $6,000 just to get those 2 doors restored. They were in pretty bad shape, but we felt that was important. The stained glass above those 2 doors, if you missed it, please take a look one day, was in the hall downtown. That was a part of the deal. They had to give that up and give us our doors. Actually, the doors were stored up in the attic. They had already taken them off and put some very sturdy doors to keep the kids up before the band was ready to play, you know. And they didn't want these wooden doors there, so we had to go up in the attic. And I was not there, but I understand they're very, very heavy doors. So about 3 people had to pick it up. But you're absolutely right. That is a set of andirons over there on fireplace there that came from the hall. We don't have a lot. A lot of our stuff ended up in people's basements, people's rooms. We had some important things that we felt needed to be preserved that are actually in the Burton Historic Library in the main library in Detroit. They have some of our early records. They have menus from the 1922 Burns dinner. It's really interesting to see, what you got for $4, and things like that. And actually, those records comprise 17 linear feet of their space, so there's quite a bit there. And we're allowed to go down there and take a look at it, Xerox it if we want. It's a great relationship we have. But keeping the past is so important. And if you don't have a home, you lose it quickly. You really lose it fast. So I encourage you, as somebody said last night, if there's an opportunity there to get any kind of room even, take it, because you'll find need for it.
And any additional questions? And just as a note of connectedness, I mean, first of all, I would encourage anybody, you should visit the library that is here. It's really one of the best collections, Scottish heritage collections in the country, really, honestly. You should stop in and just look at it, and it's really what Bob's talking about of keeping your heritage, and they serve not only as a library, but there are archives as well. But Bob touched on the notion of history, and to show you an element of connectiveness, Maggie she's a director of the Scottish Studies Foundation, and it's interesting, if you go through Canada, the work that the Scottish Studies Foundation, they have developed a network of Scottish study programs at Canadian institutions of higher education. It's impressive. And so those institutions, not only teach about Scottish heritage, they research and document that. And you don't find an equivalent network in the United States. I asked that question of Bruce Dury, who's associated with the Council of Scottish Clans Association. I said, Bruce, why is it we don't have that same network in the United States? And he said, are you serious? I mean, you don't know why? And I said, no, why is that? And he says, because academics in the United States don't want to study the Civil War and slavery, because much of the Scottish migration was in the southeast. So they don't want to get engaged in that. But Detroit, the Midwest, Detroit and Chicago, are unique in that it's primarily an industrial migration. It's an 1830s, 1840s, 1850s migration, and it's a migration that avoids that question. And so we're really in a unique situation when you start dealing with people like Robert Hopkins and others of that era. We can begin to tell a story and encourage historical research and examination that sidesteps all of those kind of controversies. And that's the kind of work that we're kind of starting to do here with this kind of restoration, the other kind of work that we hope to do here at the St. Andrews Society of Detroit. So, Camilla.
I do hope that you will share a release, a press release or something of that type when this is finished, with maybe a link to the video and some photographs, because what a wonderful way a story to tell around Burns Night, and great celebration to you, and congratulations. This is fantastic. But I think please share it with, that would be lovely.
We have a great committee working on this project. Thank you.
Well, if there are no other questions or comments.